Hey, so I'm often asked for feedback on level design portfolios and advice on how to do this stuff. So I thought for this video, I'll reach out to a bunch of lead level designers I know and get their take on things and share it all with you here. I wrote up these 7 questions that you see on screen now and got answers back from these 6 lead level designers. From left to right, they are Jason McCord, Dana Nightingale, Jason Mojica, Aquila Eliezer, Kai Zheng, and Miles Toost. I hope I've pronounced everyone's names okay there. And in case you don't know who these people are, here's a list of the kind of games they've all worked on. Trust me, everyone here is legit. And those games might make this sound very AAA focused, but I guarantee that pretty much everything everybody's saying in this video is applicable to indie stuff as well. And I also think a lot of this will be applicable to game design portfolios and probably other disciplines as well. So I hope this helps. Thanks to all the Patreon supporters for kind of helping me stick with this and get it done. And let's jump in. Question number 1 is, what are the main things you think a level design portfolio is there to show? Here's what Dana Nightingale said. Firstly, that you actually do level design. A surprising number of portfolio sites had the level design work hidden or missing, or if they were presented, only showed a few screenshots of a finished level. You've got to show that level design is work that you understand and enjoy doing. Include process and design diagrams. Explain why you made certain design choices. It's definitely true that sometimes when people say, hey, can you have a look at my level design portfolio? I take a look and most of it isn't level design. I know that this can be hard to avoid sometimes because of the way game dev courses are, but it's definitely something to bear in mind. Here's what Jason McCord had to say. Your portfolio shows me how you will design everything else. It should be easy to navigate, have a good flow, have good attention to detail, be aesthetically pleasing, give me just the right amount of information and be free of errors. All these skills are critical to level design, and your portfolio is your first chance to show that you embody these traits. That's a really interesting take because it is very true that if your portfolio is messy or just kind of weirdly confusing or hard to navigate, or it's just kind of laborious to get through because there's so much text and stuff in it, then naturally this starts to give off bad vibes, right? Because like Jason says, all of this stuff is relevant to your work as a level designer as well. One of the things we want to see is that you have a good sense of how your work comes across to other people, and the design of your portfolio can kind of show that. Okay, next up is Kai Zheng's take on this. For him, the main thing is showing the ability to make playable content, showing understanding of the level design style of the team that you're applying for, whether it's immersive sims, MMOs, side-scrollers. Also, I like to see talent in at least one of these areas: layout, combat encounters, puzzle design, scripting, and maybe most importantly, pacing. And I agree with all of this. The emphasis on real playable levels and not just making environments you can run around and look at. And I like his point about not needing to be good at every aspect of level design, but showing genuine talent and passion for at least one of them. I think that's a really good point. On to question 2, which was, how large or in-depth do you think level design portfolios should be? Aquila Eliezer says, portfolios don't need to be huge and should only show your best work. Personal work can really highlight your interests for a type of game and genre. Mod work for any game shows a higher level of investment and passion, which is something I really look for. I'm keen to see the details of your process and brief explanations of some design decisions you had to make and why you made them. So I especially agree that portfolios don't need to be big and they should only show your best work. I often point out to people that back when I was applying for jobs after university, my portfolio was only 2 projects, a Half-Life 2 level and a little Unreal Tournament deathmatch map, and I don't think the deathmatch map even made a difference because I was applying for single-player level design jobs. What I think made the difference was that my Half-Life level was finished, fully playable, high quality, and relevant to the job that I was applying for. I think that's pretty much all you need, and you only need that once or twice in your portfolio. With that in mind, here's what Jason Mojica wrote. I tend to lean on the smaller side of things, a page or 2 showing off the work. Generally, if someone is good at what they do, they're able to explain it quickly and concisely. I really agree with that. If you need to go in depth about a subject, write a blog post about it and link it in the description of your map. Some of my favourite portfolio posts tend to explain what they did, what cool things they learned, and how they applied their knowledge in a creative way to solve an issue. Yeah, so like I said, I totally agree with the idea that being able to explain things quickly and concisely is a really good skill. Dana Nightingale says, keep it light. We may be looking at dozens or even over 100 of these, and we don't have a lot of time for each one. Dana mentioned to me that she was actually dealing with over 100 applicants at the time that I reached out to her about this, so bear in mind that she means this literally. Pick maybe 1 or 2 projects you're really proud of and showcase your design process. 20 video clips aren't needed. One video and a few design diagrams is great. On a very similar note, Jason McCord says, if I'm looking over resumes, I have enough time to look at about 3 to 4 projects on someone's portfolio. For each one, I should get a clear understanding of what you did and how you did it. Goals, processes, top-down drawings, screenshots, videos. I want to see that you think deeply about your work and iterate on it. So that's Dana and Jason both talking about how the designers looking at your portfolios don't have much time. Keep things succinct and focused. Okay, on to question 3. Do you think art or visual skills are important to a level design portfolio? And if so, what kind? Mouse Toost says, artistic skills are important for communication and collaboration, but not so much in terms of creating meshes or textures. Focus on compositional techniques, architectural understanding, and geographical knowledge, which can be applied even in blockouts. Yeah, so the thing I really want to reiterate there is that level designers barely ever create meshes or textures. That kind of asset creation side of things is not the kind of artistic skills that we're generally talking about for level design. With that in mind, Jason Mahika says, yes, I do think visual skills are important, but mostly the skills that cross over to level design. To be clear, not modeling assets, but being able to clearly draw focus to landmarks or set up compositions and flow for your level, while keeping in mind the theme of the level. I also think basic lighting is a part of this, and in brackets he puts, for FPS design. Yeah, lighting in particular can be really important to some kinds of level design like first-person shooters, horror games, all that kind of thing. And so even though an artist would traditionally do the final lighting pass, for you to be able to show intense and some creative flair with lighting as a level designer can be really useful. And personally, I don't think I would ever recommend showing a level design project with no lighting in it. At least a basic pass to make things clearer and less ugly, but you should also be thinking about how you can use lighting as a level designer. Anyway, here's what Kai says. Yes, visual skills are important. I'd like to see an applicant's ability to use visual elements such as shape, color, and lighting to achieve the design goals they have in mind. Alternatively, their work in architecture, photography, or painting are great things to include. Yeah, I mean, I might be biased here because I have loads of creative interests outside of games, but I always like to see if people, make other stuff too, and they're not just playing games all the time, and obviously, especially if these interests are relevant to level design. Jason McCord says, this is tricky. If the level is really arted up, it better be packed full of interesting gameplay, so I believe the person isn't actually wanting to be an environment artist. But I do think having a good sense of lighting, composition, detail clustering, and other similar art skills is critical to almost every type of level design. So again, art skills are good, but focus on the ones that are relevant to level design and creating cool interactive experiences. Question 4 is, what common problems do you see with level design portfolios? Kai's answer to this was really short and to the point. Lack of actual gameplay, generic gameplay or ideas, lack of polish and consistency. And I basically agree with all 3 of those, It kind of boils down to, is this level design? Is there much level design there? And is it genuinely interesting and creative, and does it feel finished? Sometimes you just see projects and you feel like this needs to be pushed further and iterated on to make the impression that they wanted to make. Jason McCord says a common problem is that people will often leave in early work because it makes their portfolio feel fuller, even if it's not their best work. Only show your best work. You might feel an attachment to that old level, but be self-aware and understand that showing it means you want me to consider it as the quality I can expect to get from you if I hired you. Yep. If you have some good projects in your portfolio, but then you add some extra ones that aren't that good, personally, it might make me wonder, does this person know that it's not as good? Because if they don't, then that's a bit strange. And if they do, why are they showing me it? Think about what you're trying to say with what you put in your portfolio and how it will come across. Aquila says, I see a lot of applications where level design is clearly not the focus of the portfolio. Instead, they lean more towards art. These seem to come in a lot from university graduates where they've developed a broad range of skills for all disciplines, but haven't yet decided exactly where they want to focus their career. I think university game design courses should do a better job preparing people for this and help people specialize in a discipline earlier on. Try to make sure that your portfolio is focused on level design. It's fine to have some art in there as it shows you have broader skills, but the focus must be on level design. So I had a feeling that this generalism versus specialism thing would come up. You might have seen that I've done a YouTube short about this because, to me, coming out of university with a portfolio that presents you as a generalist To me, that's really risky because companies are never trying to hire an entry-level generalist. They're always looking for really specific roles, and they will hire people based on how good they are at that specific role. So if you spread yourself too thinly at the start of your career, it might be hard for you to get a job, because usually you'll be competing against people who focused on that job more than you did. So yeah, be careful about being a generalist at the start of your career. Question 5 was, what advice would you give for applicants doing their first level design interviews? Dana's first suggestion is to relax. Easier said than done, I know. Second, remember that you're also interviewing the leadership in the studio to see if it's a good fit for you. That can seem difficult for someone looking for their first job, but maybe keep in mind that the interview is largely a vibe check. Your CV and portfolio, and your test if you did one, showed your work. Don't try too hard to impress everyone in an interview, it's more important to be pleasant to be around. Mouse Tooth says, for first interviews, showcase your mindset and willingness to learn. Don't be afraid to admit knowledge gaps and demonstrate how you'd address them. Research the company and their level design approach and be proactive in problem solving. I'm going to jump on the problem solving part there because I think it's a good point. It's quite common in design interviews that you get questions where there isn't a kind of specific perfect answer to it, and they're not asking you for a perfect answer and they're not expecting you to get everything right first time. And what they often want to see instead is seeing how you are to work with and how you deal with the fact that you don't know a perfect answer to something, because often there isn't one. And just generally whether you can deal with problems in a productive, collaborative way. On that note, here's what Kai said. Don't pretend to know everything, because you don't. The ability and attitude to listen and learn is much more important at this stage. But also, don't be shy. Show your ability to communicate and elaborate. Come prepared, and make sure you know the games made by the team in the studio and their competitors. Jason McCord has a lot to say about the preparation side as well. He says, think deeply about the craft of level design the night before and take notes. What is level design? Why is level design important? What makes a good level? You'll often get questions like these, so it's best to have something in your head. Answer in very specific examples if possible, not abstract design philosophy. And of course, play their games and be familiar with them if you can. I think that's a really good point about not answering design questions in terms of like abstract philosophy or theory. And I say this as somebody who's done a GDC talk with a lot of fancy sounding theory in it, so I might seem like somebody who likes that kind of thing. But in an interview situation, it's much more important that you talk about things in a very practical way, because nobody's going to be impressed if you talk in this kind of fancy theoretical way about things. We're going to be much more interested in real solutions and practical ideas. The sixth question I asked everyone was, do you have any advice or preferences regarding which engines people use? And by this I mean things like Unreal versus Unity versus level editors for existing games like Half-Life and that kind of thing. Jason Mojica says, if you want to become a level designer, then start making levels for existing games. I know Steve has mentioned this before, but don't go off and try and build a game just to make levels for it. Just make a level for something like Half-Life or Proteus, Jason says. So on one hand, I obviously agree with Jason because he's agreeing with me, but I will acknowledge that obviously this limits you to working with games that have level editors for them, which, as we all know if you've looked into this stuff, is quite a narrow group of games that tends to be older and it tends to be first-person shooters. So it's more tricky if you want to do other kind of stuff. But if one of those games is relevant to your interests as a designer, then I totally recommend doing it like Jason does. This is what Jason McCord had to say. I strongly believe you have to know the game you're building for very well. If you can use an editor for a game you know inside and out, this will help you make a much better level. That's all that matters. If there isn't an editor available for the games you know well and you want to design for, then yeah, use Unreal or Unity or Source or whatever and design a mock level for that game. And finally, and amusingly, Dana's answer to this is one word long. Nope. And I'm going to interpret this to mean I don't care which tools you use, so long as your level design is good and relevant. It really is just about using whichever tools will enable you to do the best work. I would say that most of the time, if your work shows you to be a good creative fit for the role, then they'll assume that you can learn new tools on the job, because frankly that always happens on every project. Obviously, showing that you can use the tools that studio uses can be a bonus, but level design is fundamentally a creative job. And technical experience and stuff with tools is secondary to showing that you're a good designer. Okay, and as a final thing, I just asked people if they had any other advice that sprang to mind while writing these answers. Jason McCord said, regarding group projects, lean heavily on what you contributed and the processes you used, the things you did. Show your work and not the team's. This is a really common problem that I see a lot, that when you look at somebody's group project, you can't tell what that person did and what they didn't. And you really don't want to look like you might be riding other people's coattails in the team, but also if a lot of what we're seeing is your work, then you need to let us know. Don't undersell what you did. Dana's advice is, be patient. We're often doing recruiting on top of what was already 7 to 9 hour workdays, and we may be considering dozens of applicants. It can take a while. Don't give up just because nothing is moving forward. Miles has one quick suggestion to make, which is making use of resources and feedback from industry experts. Don't hesitate to reach out to professionals for advice. And naturally I agree with him here. Most people in the industry are really happy to help people if they can find the time. And so long as you're nice about it and you're polite and respectful of their time, it is totally fine to try and reach out to people and ask questions. And finally, Aquila's got something to say about being patient, but in a slightly different way to Dana. He says, after leaving university, I did not have the greatest luck finding my dream job in the games industry. I ended up taking a QA job where I learned a great deal about game development and was able to make lots of contacts, whilst developing my skills and building a portfolio. I got feedback from the devs I worked with which helped me improve and build relationships, and I eventually got into design. It was tough, but I never gave up on my dream. So my advice is don't give up on your passion and keep growing. I thought this would be a nice one to finish off with because it's definitely a thing that most game developers, if not all of us, can look back on times when things seem like a real struggle and like nothing's working out, getting rejections from jobs and that kind of thing. But not only do things usually work out in the end and new things come up, often the things that we end up doing as a result of being rejected by other stuff works out to be even cooler. And you look back and you're kind of glad that didn't work out. So if your job applications seem tough for a while, then I really hope you can stick it out and find a way through it. Try and be positive and open-minded about what you want to do and what you can be excited to do. And hopefully, things will work out, often in surprising ways. Okay, that's the end of the advice. I hope that was useful because there's loads of stuff in there which I think is really good for you to hear. Really curious to hear what you think in the comments for this one. I can imagine there are plenty more questions that you might have. And if I feel like I can help, I'll try and get back to you on them. As always, cheers for listening and take it easy. See ya.